Good evening, and welcome to CoSIDA's Academic All-America Hall of Fame recognition ceremony, honoring 4 distinguished former student athletes and the 2020 Dick Enberg Award winner. CoSIDA takes great pride in the Academic All-America Awards program, which, since 1952, has honored the most outstanding student athletes across all divisions and all sports for excellence on and off the playing fields and courts throughout their career. Since 1998, CoSIDA has inducted more than 150 of those student athletes into the Academic All-America Hall of Fame. It is our pleasure to recognize the class of 2020, so please welcome our host from ESPN, Reese Davis.
I'm pleased to once again have been asked to serve as your MC. It's an event that I look forward to every year, and these are truly some remarkable people that you're going to meet tonight. The unique circumstances created by the global pandemic didn't allow us to gather for last year's celebration in Las Vegas, nor, unfortunately, will it allow us to do so this summer in Orlando. But we are extremely pleased that all of our honorees are able to tell their stories and also to thank those who have helped them along the way through the magic of everyone's favorite medium, Zoom. Boy, do I wish I'd bought Zoom stock like 2-3 years ago, if that was a thing. But I digress. I know we're grateful for all of their time, and we look forward to meeting in person again next summer. Tonight, we recognize 4 outstanding individuals for induction into the CoSIDA Academic All-America Hall of Fame, as well as the presentation of the 2020 Dick Enberg Award. These people have made countless contributions to their respective institutions, to their professions, and society as a whole. The 2020 induction class will now join previous honorees of the Academic All-America Hall of Fame with recognition on plaques that are permanently displayed at the NCAA Hall of Champions in Indianapolis. Let's begin tonight's program by honoring the broadcasting legend who, for so many years, sort of like a little kid on Christmas when this night came around. Established in 1997, the Dick Enberg Award is given annually to a person whose actions and commitment have furthered the meaning and reach of the Academic All-America program and the student athlete while promoting the values of education and academics. The award was created in part to recognize Dick's passion and support of the Academic All-America program for 30 years, and more importantly, his dedication to education for more than 4 decades. The list of previous Enberg Award honorees reads like a veritable who's who of sport and society. It includes Olympic athletes, Hall of Fame coaches, cabinet members, and a former president of the United States. In December 2017, Dick's voice as one of the great broadcasters and great champions of education and athletics went silent with his passing. But as was his true belief and passion, he wanted us to continue to honor those who have made a difference through their actions. That tradition of excellence continues tonight with the presentation to this year's recipient who has made an important and indelible impact on collegiate athletics. A member of the Academic All-America Hall of Fame, Amy Privette Perko was a star on the basketball court at Wake Forest. For the light she has helped cast on important issues impacting student athletes across the country as Chief Executive Officer of the Knight Commission on Intercollegiate Athletics is just as bright. Amy enjoyed a special bond with Dick Enberg, and that goes back to when she was a student athlete at Wake Forest.
When I was a junior at Wake Forest and received the National Academic All-America honor, and being able to meet him and see his passion for education and his passion for this program, and being named now an award named for him is just an overwhelming honor. And I'd also like to thank Bill Friday, the founding co-chairman of the Knight Commission on Intercollegiate Athletics. Bill Friday was a giant in higher education. He was a mentor to me in terms of the commission's work and why it was so important. You know, the founding principles of why we have college sports and to work with leaders to try to achieve that.
Many people may not be aware of the important role the Knight Commission plays in providing opportunities for student athletes at all levels of play, both athletically and academically. Amy talks about the role in making those chances possible.
Well, first, from a big picture perspective, you know, the Knight Commission is an independent leadership group whose purpose is to lead transformational change that will prioritize college athletes' education, health, safety, and success. You know, in a nutshell, is to keep the college in college sports. I saw it as an opportunity to really impact national policy and and to enable college sports leaders with national policy to all be working together toward the goals that we all want to see achieved. And first and foremost, that was, academic success and the priority on the educational experience of the athlete. And so we're really proud of the track record that the Knight Commission has had over influencing major change. And, I would point to two major examples. And these examples, I think, have really impacted the priority on education and the priority on graduation rates. And today, college athletes are graduating at the highest rates ever, with the highest rates ever. And the two examples of the Commission's influence, one was to adopt an academic threshold for postseason eligibility. That was adopted in 2011, where teams have to be on track to graduate half their players to be eligible for national championship competition. And then secondly, embedding academic incentives in the NCAA's revenue distribution. So basically the Commission's influence was around, changing some of the policies and the financial incentives so that those were aligned and better aligned with the educational mission and the educational goals. And again, the work did take years in a lot of different ways: research, advocacy, communication, to lead to those results that have benefited college athletes.
Amy has said many times how passionate she is about her work with the Commission. She reflects on what has been the most special part of that experience and what she sees as the Commission's role in shaping educational opportunities.
One thing that, the public doesn't understand, everyone, associates college sports with, the big events, the March Madness, but just the work that, really great people do day in and day out. And the folks who work at the NCAA really are just committed to providing these, very unique opportunities for college students to develop in their sport, to have fun in their sport, and to have these awesome learning and leadership experiences that sports provide. So many of the current questions and debate in college sports is about the money, where the money comes from and where the money goes. And those are two pretty simple questions, but there's a lot of complexities in answering that as it relates to, the NCAA, which includes more than 1,000 members and very different financial structures within those institutions, and different financial structures within the college sports and the money that's generated. So the Knight Commission has worked really hard over the years to develop easy to understand graphs that really explain where the money comes from and where the money goes. Because ultimately we believe providing greater financial transparency and a clear understanding will make the model stronger, ultimately one that's going to benefit the college athletes and the universities.
As a former standout student athlete at Wake, Amy developed skill sets very early. It made a huge difference in her education and her life journey. She shares what advice she would give to student athletes as they focus on their own educational journeys.
For me, it goes back to an acronym I learned at the K-Yale basketball camp back when I was in the 5th grade. And that's, again, the acronym that teaches you how to shoot. BEEF. You've probably heard it, BEEF. And B stands for balance. Eyes is about what you're focused on. The other E is effort and extending yourself, extending your elbow, and then following through. One of the most important parts of the shot is your follow through. So, when I associate that with, more broadly, kind of an acronym for your career and what you're doing is to approach it with a balance, and have a goal in mind and focus on that goal. Don't get distracted, and be willing to extend out of your comfort zone. And then of course, following through, just the key.
Congratulations to Amy Privette Perko, the 24th recipient of the Dick Enberg Award. Our first Hall of Fame inductee this evening excelled on the volleyball court at Mount Holyoke College as both a student athlete and leader. And Michelle Johannes continues to make a difference in the world through her work at the Naval Research Laboratory. Many people may not know where Mount Holyoke College is. It's tucked away along the Connecticut River Valley in western Massachusetts, and Michelle tells us what her experience as a student there was like.
Mount Holyoke was a fantastic experience for me. It was simultaneously a very competitive and very supportive environment, both academically and athletically. It's a women's college, and I think one great thing about it academically is they really push you hard. I would say the curriculum there is as challenging as it is anywhere. The professors are tough on you, but at the same time, you can tell they absolutely believe that you can do all of the extraordinary things they're asking you to do. And it was the same athletically. And so that combination of challenge and support allowed me to pursue physics, which was something I came into college with a rather poor background in. I didn't have a lot of the prereqs, I would say, that a lot of my fellow students came in with. But I was given the chance to take the courses, and I put the time and effort in, and I was supported. And from the very first physics class I took, I switched my major from, I thought I would be chemistry or math, and I switched to physics immediately. I had such a great professor, and I learned so much, and I fell in love with the actual challenge of having a problem I didn't understand and then getting over that intellectual barrier. And even now in my career, that feeling of understanding something that was previously confusing is, it's what I live for. And I think I learned that at Mount Holyoke.
Michelle experienced an emotion that all athletes do when their playing days are about to end, but she made the most of that by becoming a coach. She describes how fulfilling the experience was, giving back to others in her sport.
Probably one of the worst days of my life is the last day of my last season. When you're an athlete, it's a huge part of your life. And I just needed to stay in the game. And I had an incredible coach in high school. My high school volleyball coach was just amazing, as was my college volleyball coach, but I think I patterned my own coaching more after my high school coach, and just really pushed me again, like I was pushed. And in wanting to stay in the game, I thought, maybe I could do that for some athletes who are coming up. And so that's what I did. I went and coached for a year, and I was actually the only physics major that year who didn't go straight on to graduate school. And one of the reasons was because I just couldn't bear to leave volleyball behind, and there's no opportunity in graduate school. So I stayed in and stayed coaching, and I did my best to give to younger athletes what was given to me, which is the chance to be both academic and athletic. I coached at MIT, so these were obviously very academic women who were playing on my team.
The work that Michelle performs at the Naval Research Laboratory is incredibly fascinating and most assuredly rewarding. She tells us about what a day in the life of Michelle Johannes is like and describes some of the projects she's worked on.
The Naval Research Laboratory is about 2,000 scientists and maybe an equal number of support staff, all of whom are civilians. So imagine you're trying to make a better battery, right? And you have this whole periodic table of elements that you could use to make materials. And we have a material. Your standard material in your phone right now is lithium cobalt oxide, right? Cobalt's expensive. The voltage is not in the range that we'd like it to be. It doesn't hold a charge for as long as we want. So we'd like to switch out the cobalt for other elements. But where do you start? And every time you go into the laboratory and try that, you have to make the material, and then you put it into a battery, and then you put it in a glove box, and it could catch on fire. Someone could get injured. It's expensive, it's time consuming, and most of those materials aren't going to work anyway. The great strength of computational work is that we can model that on a computer and save everyone that time. And so I can run through an extraordinary number of materials, develop a basic understanding, and then give experimentalists a template for what to try, so that they don't waste their time, dragging their materials through the garden of the periodic table.
Michelle's work impacts both the present and the future, and she finds both very rewarding.
I may never develop the next great battery, so the benefits of my work every day may never actually penetrate into society. But I think that science should have an impact on a more regular basis. And I really think it is the duty of scientists to make sure that their impact is not only in that, 1 in a million discovery that saves humanity or whatever, but also in dissemination of the thought process and the ideas. I wrote the entries for electricity and magnetism in the World Book Encyclopedia, and I tried very hard to communicate accurately what's really going on with electricity and magnetism, but in a way that 4th grade me would have wanted to sit there and read it. And whenever I'm invited, I go speak at high schools, and sometimes when I'm not invited, if I haven't been invited for a while, I call people on the phone and say, I want to come talk at your high school, because I want scientific literacy to be part of our society, and not just the kids who want to go on to STEM, but everyone. I think scientific literacy is something our society needs. When people don't understand how science works, it becomes magic, and they can also distrust it. And then you have something like a global pandemic, and you have people who don't trust the scientists, and that can be dangerous, right? So the thought process of science, the excitement of science, and the understanding how it can make your lives better and how you can incorporate that thought process into your own life, I think that's important. Not only is the high-level science I'm doing beneficial for society, but that science gets woven into everyday life.
Congratulations to Michelle Johannes on her induction into the CoSIDA Academic All-America Hall of Fame. A number of years ago, CoSIDA instituted the honorary category to recognize outstanding student athletes who almost certainly would have been academic All-Americans had the program existed in their sport at the time they were competing. Previous honorary inductees have included the late John Wooden, Supreme Court Justice Byron Whizzer White, Dr. Donna Lopiano, Nancy Hogshead Makar, Dr. Harry Edwards, and the 2019 honoree, Greg Meredith of Notre Dame. Our next Hall of Fame inductee continues that tradition of excellence, as Bruce Furniss was a world record holder and Olympic swimming gold medalist at the University of Southern California, and through his philanthropic work has proven how deep the sport's roots run and how connected the swimming community is. Growing up in a home with 3 brothers, Bruce enjoyed the daily competition for athletic supremacy, but it was his older brother Steve who provided a special kind of sibling rivalry. He talks about that relationship and how they pushed each other, pushed back.
Nobody in my life, outside of probably my parents, had more belief in me and more to do with my success as an athlete than my brother Steve. You pick the game, you pick the sport. We'll find a way to compete at it. And I think we're unique and the only known brothers to break one another's world records in any sport. So we're very proud of. I'm a little foggy on the facts, but I believe we raced head-to-head in major meets 7 times, and he got the better of me 5 of those times.
Bruce has often said it was a dream to compete with his brother on an international stage, and that dream ultimately became reality.
What was unique about that race in Kansas City when I beat him was I was having a pretty good meet. I felt pretty good throughout that meet, and I remember when I touched the wall, touched with my right hand, and he was I guess he would have been to my left, I saw nothing but gutter when I touched the wall, and I expected to see him ahead of me, right? And so it was an alien thought that, here, big brother had finished behind me. But it had always been our hope and our dream to compete in the Olympics against each other. And ironically, and because of me winning that race, he got onto the team, and we got to go to Japan together, which was sort of special.
Bruce was diagnosed with an arthritic condition that made it difficult to do many things, let alone swim at a world-class level. talks about what he endured both physically and mentally just to compete.
I think it was coming into my senior year that I finally got the diagnosis, and that was after a summer I had frankly, I thought the summer of 78, I was probably in the best shape of my life. I was eventually diagnosed with an arthritic condition called ankylosing spondylitis. And it basically is diagnosed through the fusing of your sacroiliac joint and your low back. So I tended to have a lot of low back pain, and it's ironic that the first thing my rheumatologist told me is, he says, the best therapy I recommend for people with ankylosing spondylitis is swimming, and in particular breaststroke, which was my weakest stroke. And because it did keep the flexion and flexibility of the spine moving. The thing you don't want to do when you have arthritis is stop moving, because the joints tend to stiffen up and eventually fuse. And my brother would tell you, because he witnessed it, that there were times where I didn't know if I could get out of bed to race, but I found a way to get to the pool. And so a lot of the races I had were in and of themselves personal victories, that I overcame what I was confronting at that time to do it. So I mean, to win a race or to break a world record, or win a gold medal, that was just a byproduct. And I tended to find that my thought process and my tenacity and my focus was better when I was confronted with these types of issues. I had very clearly directed ideas of what needed to be done, and everything got reduced to its simplest way of going about it.
Bruce arrived on the world's biggest stage at the 1976 Olympics in Montreal, and talks about competing with his brother and other favorite memories from those games.
I swam the second day of the games, and I had a really neat moment with my brother before I went to the pool that night. And we were right outside the elevator bank, and we're looking over, because you could see the pool in a distance from the village. And I had decided I'd just go for a leisurely walk, which is probably half mile to 3/4 of a mile away, to just clear my head instead of taking the bus over. And he says to me, I want you to realize that this moment will never come again. That, what you think about between now and the end of your race, frankly, can be the difference between winning and losing. And don't think you'll get a second chance. And I thought those were very prophetic words, because as you know, 4 years later, we boycotted. And so that really was my shot. And I really focused that day on trying to stay in the moment and embrace where I was, not to let negative thoughts come into my head, not to think about anything else than the environment I was in, try to take as much of it in as I could. And actually, as I got closer to the start of the race, I began to realize that it was very intoxicating to have the anticipation of swimming, and that the preparation and the ritual that led up to the starting pistol, it really was really almost addictive. I mean, it's the race became somewhat anticlimactic, and that's not just in the Olympics. It's everything that leads up to that, and the excitement and the edge of excitement that you feel when you're about to embark on something that could go really, really well and could go terribly wrong. And I missed that a lot.
One of the many charitable endeavors that Bruce is involved in is named for his former USC teammate, Mike Nyholt, who was paralyzed in an accident in college. The amount of money raised in the last 40 years in the Swim with Mike event has made a great impact on the lives of many physically challenged athletes. He tells us how the foundation was started and the impact it continues to make.
I get a call in January 2nd of 1981. Mike had an accident yesterday. He broke his neck. Mike was my college teammate. He's a year ahead of me at USC. He was also my roommate my junior year. Nonetheless, he was airlifted to a hospital, and we all got together and said, we've got to do something to help Mike. And I believe Mike at the time had some remaining credits at USC that he was finishing up. He needed to handicap equip his home, and he needed to get a van to get around. And so we did a swimathon called Swim for Mike. And it was out at the old City of Industry pool, and we all showed up, and we swam laps and raised money. And to our complete and utter amazement, Mike showed up to the swim unannounced, and he was transported to the swim. He was in a halo, and he says, please come back next year and we'll swim with Mike. And what ended up happening is we raised more money than Mike could consume. And so we decided to start a scholarship program called the Physically Challenged Disabled Athletes Scholarship Fund. And it basically funds college scholarships to athletes. And they could have been an athlete at the most remedial level, at any level or at any age. They just had to have been an athlete who had become disabled through illness or injury. And we started funding scholarships originally at USC, and today we're well north of 210 scholarship recipients at about 160 schools across the country, all name brands you've probably heard of and some you haven't. We've raised about just over $25 million in that 40 years. These stories are compelling. These people are true champions and people that just live a quiet walk, that they're just grateful to be here and never see bitterness. It's been very enriching.
It's been a little over a year since Bruce suffered cardiac arrest, and he updates us now on how his recovery's gone and what has made him appreciate in life.
March 29th is now my rebirth day. Not to get into a whole lot of detail, but my wife was the one that saved my life. I have, I've had survivor's guilt. I've had a lot of things to say, what is it that I'm to learn from this event? And one of the things that I was touched by within about a month after I was home, my friends put together, because of COVID, they put together a parade. And this parade was over 200 cars long, and it came down my street, and we live on a cul-de-sac, so they turned around right in front of our house, and they had signs and they waved, and I had no idea that I was loved and that I had that much connection to that many people. I was just overwhelmed by it. To talk about it's really hard, but I think that swimming has made me who I am and given me riches beyond my wildest dreams.
Congratulations to Bruce Furniss on his induction into the CoSIDA Academic All-America Hall of Fame. Our next inductee made her mark on camera after dominating the basketball courts in her native Canada and then traveling to America's heartland for college and a WNBA career. Stacey Dales elevated the University of Oklahoma into a hoops powerhouse and earned her stripes playing in the WNBA before embarking on a highly successful career in broadcasting. Stacey made her name in basketball, but as a native of Canada, she grew up in a household where hockey ruled the roost. She talks about some of the other sports she played and how she got bitten by the basketball bug.
Hockey is sort of the religion in Canada if you're a sports fan. And my brother was an outstanding hockey player. So I grew up in hockey rinks, not as a hockey player, but as a supporter to my older brother. I did play soccer. So I devoted my summers to soccer and my spring to track and field, but really half of the year to basketball, the winter months, which is a long period of time in Canada. You had your, of course, elementary school, phys ed, and different programs of that nature, and then into high school. But I realized at a very young age, I think I was about 9 or 10 years old, that with a basketball in my hands, I could do things on the court to easily influence others to be better. And that was very alluring to me and made me feel really good.
Growing up in Ontario, Stacey's recruiting process was interesting when it came time to choose a school. She talks about how difficult that process was and what ultimately led her to Oklahoma.
Well, it was a very unpopular decision, I would say. At the age of 17, growing up in a very small town of Brockville, Ontario, Canada, 21,000 people. Oklahoma was my fifth and final visit because Syracuse was right in my back door growing up in Canada. You know, through perhaps a little trepidation from my parents, they were extremely supportive, and we bypassed Syracuse and went to Norman, Oklahoma, and that was quite the transition. So when I was at Oklahoma, basketball was my passion. It was my favorite thing in the world. I was really interested in a journalism program at Oklahoma. To be very honest with you, it conflicted with every practice time we had during the week, some of the core courses. And it was important to me, however, so I put an emphasis in mass journalism with communication, and I put myself in a lot of coursework in which I was doing presentations every day.
We all know that representing your country in the Olympics is the greatest honor an athlete can have.
I had redshirted my first year at Oklahoma, so I had the redshirt freshman year, then the sophomore year. So I was really 3 years into Oklahoma and was a part of the Canadian national team. And we qualified for the Olympics, which is a big feat in itself. The Olympic experience when you're 20, I mean, goodness gracious. Walking in to an opening ceremony format, it is the most galvanizing world experience and global experience I can recall. It's a moment where you have all these different countries and these different nations coming together and applauding one another. I think it's probably the most peaceful that the world could be in one moment.
Stacey was also outstanding in the WNBA, and her time in the league ultimately led to an opportunity at ESPN, where her broadcasting career took flight.
To be drafted third overall, go to the Washington Mystics with an incredible fan base there, go to the playoffs consecutively. And what was interesting, though, for me was I had an opportunity to audition with ESPN as a women's basketball analyst. And little did I know that would evolve into a near 8-year career at ESPN with an array of different sports and umbrellas, from the men's side of hoops to the NBA to college football, Little League World Series. I mean, I covered a great outdoor games. The great outdoor games were like, I got to see dogs jump and people log roll. So I couldn't be more grateful, really, as I reflect back when I think about my WNBA journey, how it propelled me and launched me into my career at ESPN, which really was the impetus of my television career. After that process, the NFL Network came into my life, and it's been a wonderful journey, finishing 12 seasons and entering a 13th. Just love the league, and looking back, I'm just really grateful.
Stacey talks about other pioneers in broadcasting, such as former Enberg Award recipient Ann Myers-Drysdale, who set the bar high in creating opportunities for women. She talks about the importance of that and pushing for similar opportunities for women in sports.
Well, we always talk about in football moving the chains. It's almost unfathomable to consider that we're still trying to move the chains on the women's side of things in life. I think about, the great Cynthia Cooper, who I could see on an NBA sideline talking hoops. And I think about Annie Myers and seeing her in the booth. As a woman, I've had to really put a level of preparation into what I do at a unique place. And, I can't afford in my profession to make mistakes. I don't think anybody can, nor does anybody want to. Mistakes actually do happen in life. But I think as women, we have to push a little bit more sometimes, and that's not to take away from our male counterparts. But there is an added level of, I think, desire for us to push, because we don't just get those opportunities of promotions. And I would like for that to be the case. I would like to see more women promoted because we've earned it.
Social media has created a completely different way to communicate, and Stacey talks about the importance of fostering meaningful relationships as time goes on.
With the social media impact that we have now, it's really awesome. and you can really make a positive difference if you use it the right way. We don't always, none of us are perfect, but I would just say cherish every moment that you have, every practice that you go to. You can't ever get those back. So for a student athlete at the collegiate level for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years, be really cognizant that it doesn't last forever. And there's a next stage in the journey, and to really cherish the journey and each day that you're in it.
Congratulations to Stacey Dales on her induction into the CoSIDA Academic All-America Hall of Fame. And Stacey, you're welcome. If not for the great atmosphere I gave in your TV audition at ESPN, I'm not sure where your broadcasting career would have gone. Probably the same place, but anyway. Our final Hall of Fame honoree ranks as one of the all-time greats in college football history at the University of Utah. Alex Smith provided one of the great inspirational stories of the past 2 years when he came all the way back from a horrific injury, a compound fracture of his leg. He was in danger of losing his leg after infection set in. But Alex fought, never wavered, came back, and took the field once again for the Washington football team. With all the accolades he earned as a collegian, Alex reflects on where being named an academic All-American at Utah ranks in his career.
It's one of the awards I'm the most proud of, for sure, in my playing career. I think because of what it represents. Obviously the student athlete and doing both at a really high level. And it's really hard. And it is something that I'm really, really proud of, especially from my college career. Beyond player of the years and, Heisman finalists and things like that, I am really, really proud of that award.
When you consider the injury that Alex suffered and what it took just to try to come back, what in the world could have motivated him, what that experience was like, and what it was like for him not only as an athlete, but as a husband and a father.
For a long, long time, a huge part of my rehab, I wasn't necessarily thinking about football at all. For me, my greatest fuel came from getting back to being a father, for me to be a husband. It's hard. You have dark thoughts. You have, a lot of doubt about what your future is going to look like. That's what my daily motivation was. And as my ability, over the course of 2 years, would slowly increase, I could do more and more as a father and a husband. And it only, I think, helped fuel the fire for me. There was a long time there when I was stuck in a hospital bed and stuck in a wheelchair. And when you have 3 little kids and a household, they keep rolling. And I'm so thankful that my wife was able to keep the household going. But for me, I wasn't able to take part in a lot of it for a long time. And that really ate away at me, and it fueled me to get back to being as much of a father as I could get back. I didn't know what I had left, and a husband, and I wanted to get as much as possible back as I could. And I knew that if I could, I would cherish every moment of it. And so every day I would do more with my kids if I could. I would do more with my wife, live a little more, and for me that was so important and so vital, and really was my family daily, fueled me, and for me is what I chased to be a part of.
There was so much in the media about Alex's relationship with then rookie Patrick Mahomes when both were on the roster of the Kansas City Chiefs. By simply going about their business in a professional way every day, their relationship was respectful and ultimately grew into a mentoring role.
It's another, I think one of the things I'm most proud of for my playing career is Patrick and I's relationship and how that got handled. I think, here you had a young early pick come in, basically as my replacement, and the entirety of the NFL media pitting us against each other, us choosing not to do it a different way, to not getting sucked into that. From day one, having mutual respect for each other and having a working relationship. They were teammates. So both of us thrust into this situation, and how are we going to handle it? And really what did we control? And certainly that was our attitude and approach to each other and to the team. The most important thing wasn't anything that I was imparting to Patrick. It wasn't knowledge that I was verbally spouting. really, I think it was how I went about my business day in and day out. And I think being an open book to Patrick, really, I think inviting him in as a quarterback room, we do everything together. And so for me, important, obviously, to include him in that, to make him feel welcome, I think. And so for me, just to kind of be that example of how I went about things, I think, and being that example, and obviously letting Patrick pull bits and pieces that he liked and that pertained to him, so he obviously could go on and down the path he was going to go.
The work that the Alex Smith Foundation does to help young people move from foster care to adulthood is incredibly powerful.
I was 20, turning 21, when I first started to learn about foster youth emancipating from the system, and that's what they call it when most foster youth turn 18 and all their government assistance ends, and they're really left to their own to fight and obviously make it. And for me, only being a few years removed from that, I couldn't imagine what that looks like, and I know I wouldn't have made it given those circumstances. And so for me, I just remembering how unfair it was, and for me to this day, I'm almost 37, and how important my family is to me, how much they support me to this day, my extended family. And so, important for me to give back to those, like I said, that they're born into, different circumstances, and how unlucky that was, how lucky I was to be where I am. And so for me, just to try to give back, and really the birth of that, came through, I knew how important school and academics were to me and on my road to success. And so to give that opportunity to foster youth who were aging out of the system, about half graduate high school in this country still today. Less than 3% ever graduate college. And it's just a daunting challenge. And so for me to help provide some of that support to these kids as they get their feet on the ground so that they can continue their education, so that they can finish their education, was really important. And so same thing, it's something it's not real sexy. It doesn't get a lot of attention in the media. And so if you can shine a little bit of light on it and make a difference in an area, then obviously that is fantastic.
Congratulations to Alex Smith on his induction into the CoSIDA Academic All-America Hall of Fame. Dick Enberg always famously said after each induction ceremony, every year we don't think it can get any better, and then it does. Those words certainly ring true once again with this amazing 2020 induction class for the CoSIDA Academic All-America Hall of Fame. So let's congratulate them once again. Michelle Johannes of Mount Holyoke College, Bruce Furniss from USC, Stacey Dales of Oklahoma, Alex Smith from Utah, and our 2020 Dick Enberg Award recipient, Amy Privette Perko from Wake Forest. Now, please welcome the chair of the Academic All-America Hall of Fame Committee, Mark Fleming of Moravian College, who will share some final thoughts.
On behalf of CoSIDA's Academic All-America Hall of Fame Committee, I extend congratulations to Michelle, Stacey, Bruce, and Alex on their induction to the CoSIDA Academic All-America Hall of Fame, and to Amy Perko, the distinguished winner of the 2020 Dick Enberg Award. We hope you enjoyed learning about these outstanding student-athletes and invite you to tune in on this Wednesday, June 9th at 7 p.m. for recognition of the Academic All-America Hall of Fame class of 2021 and the 2021 Dick Enberg Award winner.